Blitz is defined as a sudden, savage attack. It is indeed all this. The effect is sure. The premise is simple. It's a basic, primal confrontation, man to man. No excuses are offered. None accepted.
Welcome to the latest edition of Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com.
Looks like a radio station.
Now, here are your hosts, lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers,
Pure athlete, yeah.
I transcend race, hombre.
Matt Butler,
I don't talk, man. I back it up.
And we are chock full of that.
Damn right.
and Jeff Howe.
It's still real to me, damn it.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
If you're gonna blitz, come strong, but don't come at all.
Coming strong with another edition of Longhorn Blitz with Horns 24/7. I am Jeff Howe. We've got some actual news to sink our teeth into, some good football news to lead the discussion this week. Let me go ahead and bring in the rest of the team. He is the master of the soundboard, the drop machine extraordinaire, Matt Butler. Matt, how are you, sir?
Doing well, having some laughs before the show. How about you?
Hey, speaking of drop machine,
Yes.
what percentage of stuff would you say made it from? I get this question a lot. This is really the only question people ask me about Matt. Like, hey, how come Matt doesn't play drops? Like, how much stuff did you guys lose moving from one studio to the other? So what percentage of stuff would you say made it over from the old studio to where we are now?
Well, whenever I got canned in 2012, I had like some spies inside just constantly sending me stuff for like years. So I have it divided. It's all in my Gmail, those ones of context. But then there's that wide, vast amount that like we would remember something, and I knew that all we had to know was what game week was it in, and we could go back to the chronology to where you had this library of never-ending sound of Mac Brown. Like, you're talking thousands upon thousands of hours that I could go find him saying something goofy. So anytime that you wanted to, you could start and create a whole new world of drops. So of that stuff, like I'd say 99%, but I got to keep that top 1%. It just sucks that you can't go back and like, we remember Muschamp and then just go play with Muschamp sound from 10 years ago is always fun.
Because that always leads into the next question I always get about Matt is, when is Matt going to do the episode where his responses to everything you and Rod say are nothing but Mac Brown drops?
That was what happened right at that exact same time.
Yeah,
that ended in that last building, because that's when we had, like, that was what I was building up that over there.
I don't know if we're going to do it.
No, there's no way. Like, I could go over there and try to, go host Ken's show with them for a day or two and then pull some stuff out, but that's about the only way I can do it.
Do a little CIA mission.
Yes.
Let's cover it up, bro.
Yeah,
we could do that.
Go undercover and kind of get this done. I still got some connections. I think we can make this happen.
Because we could just tell people to just.
How long do you need? Is the question. Like, we're planning this crime on air.
Exactly.
Criminal mastermind.
Oh no, it would be one of the scratch your back quid pro quo, doctor. I do something for free for y'all, then y'all do something for free.
I think we
for
could
us.
have somebody do it for us, and we wouldn't have to actually commit the crime.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
we just tell them to go hit every single Mac thing and press play.
Okay,
and then we just have never-ending.
We'll talk after the show.
Yes, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
See, a man who knows about covert ops and a lot of stuff. That's how much of a jack of all trades he is. Because he's our Renaissance man here on the show and on the Austin Radio Network and the Horn. 104.9, 101.9 AM, 1260. Streaming on the Horn app and on hornfm.com, where you get him each and every weekday on the Rodcast from 1 to 3. He's a lifetime Longhorn, 2002 UT All-American, 2002 semifinalist for the Jim Thorpe Award, 4th-round draft choice of the New York Giants in 2003. Spent his NFL career with the Giants, Lions, Bears, Bucks, Broncos, and a year with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. In the CFL, when he was done with football, got himself back to Austin, Texas, in the 40 acres where he earned his degree. When he gets his T-ring in, which it'll be soon, I hope, he will wear it proudly. Nevertheless, he is a card-carrying member of DBU. Number 21 in your program, number 1 in your hearts, Mr. Rod Babers. And, Rod, we've got some actual good... before we get into the football news, I just want to go over something real quick. It's not anything major. Just to shout out, it was the vast majority of our listening audience is men, and guys, we don't like going to the doctor. We don't like taking care of ourselves. But just another friendly reminder of it's important to get stuff checked out. For a long time, I've had trouble sleeping, and really since my daughter was born, I've had a lot of trouble sleeping because you're up and down throughout the night, and I've passed it off as well. This is just me being tired. Well, the fatigue has kind of crept on, and I've had trouble sleeping, and I've gone sleeping through large chunks of the day. I've slept in late and, been late for things like this podcast. So finally got to the point where I was sleeping so infrequently, and my snoring when I did sleep got so bad, my wife was like, you need to go get that checked out because you're driving me nuts. So, shout out to actually one of the Horn sponsors, the Sinus and Snoring Center, Dr. Slaughter, up around Mopac and Parma area. I went there last week, did an at-home sleep study, and as it turns out, I have a pretty significant case of sleep apnea.
Dude, Rod told you that.
Nice.
I remember
Glad you got it done,
it.
bro. For real, man.
So,
Yeah.
CPAP is on the way. I should be breathing better, sleeping easier. Like I'm
change your life,
I'm anxious to know what it's like to get a good night of sleep.
You've probably been going most of your
adult
entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know how far back this goes. I mean, you have no idea now, but you probably haven't gotten a decent night's sleep in like
a decade.
Yeah,
like I just want to know what it's
Ken Milam's life. Kid, I remember him wearing the big old mask.
I want to know what it's like to go to sleep and wake up without a headache.
Dude, I'm telling you, man. You're going, and no, honestly, man, it saving your life. I mean, was it
Reggie White?
Reggie White, yeah.
Reggie White.
There are a couple of instances where, and I forget, but there are some other celebrities who have honestly passed away from sleep apnea in the end. Yeah, man. Nah, ain't nothing to mess around with.
So, guys, go get yourself checked. Don't be,
done.
don't hesitate. Don't be afraid. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make you any less manly to go to the doctor. Actually, sleep apnea, as Rod said, it jacks with your heart and all different kinds of stuff. So, get it taken care of. I'm also getting my allergies taken care of, which is good and bad. They're going to get me set up with some allergy drops. But I had to wait a week in between last Wednesday when I went in and this Wednesday when I go in to get my allergy test done. I can't take any antihistamines for that week, and you guys know the weather is constantly changing. So it feels like somebody's driving like straight pins into my eyes right now. So
that's horrible.
It's a little rough, but hope on the other side we'll
I'm glad you got that done, man. That's good, man. That's gonna be life changing for you. You're great at your job now. You're unbelievable. I mean, imagine how good you're going to be at your job when you start getting regular sleep.
Next football season, watch out for Jeff Howe.
Right?
He's coming for you.
You're going to be better at your job. You're going to be a better father. You're going to be a better husband. All that.
I appreciate that.
All because of sleep. No, man. It's the reason LeBron James gets 10 hours of sleep. So does J.J. Watt, Usain Bolt. You know what I mean? Like the power of sleep is real.
So if I want to sleep 10 hours, I should just tell them, well, hey, LeBron gets 10 hours.
Yeah.
J.J. Watt gets 10 hours.
There's a sleep crisis in this country. People don't realize it.
Remember that? I mean, the Astros
aren't we the only country in the civilized world that doesn't take like regular vacations, and we don't nap, and
we take the least amount of vacation days out of any westernized nation, which is also ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absurd. It was like that Astros pitcher that went from going and being like he was just failing in the minors to throwing 98. And he now, I think it was James, he came up as a reliever this past year. It was all because of sleep apnea and Lunau, and the team noticed it and got him on it. Yeah, it was nuts.
What?
Yeah. So, we're starting the show with an uplifting message, and we'll keep going with the uplifting message because Tom Herman's looking to uplift that Texas offense. Rod, we left the show last week talking about just how malleable the offense was. And was the Texas offense in 2018 great? No, but it's really amazing when you go back and start watching film and start looking at some of the the game books and the stat sheets and breaking stuff down, like how really the offense, based on what Texas needed to do to control games, did exactly what it needed to do throughout 14 games. It was really amazing to watch. But now, I think, Rod, you said it for years, and I agree with you, having covered this league for so long now. Defense does win championships, points win the Big 12 until proven otherwise. You've got to have an elite-level offense to win at a high rate in this league. And Tom Herman is definitely in the process of doing that. He hires Larry Fedora as an analyst. Now, there's still a chance David Beatty joins this staff as an analyst. I know that was the big offseason move everybody was looking at making. David Beatty's actually in contract dispute's not the right term, but basically there's some wrangling, if you will, between David Beatty and Kansas to get some things straightened out with the buyout and offsets and all that different kind of stuff. Well, Larry Fedora didn't have any of that. He already got everything straightened out with North Carolina.
What's his buyout? $12 million?
Yeah, but it offsets, so North Carolina still has to pay him even if he gets another job. So really, Texas could pay him like $20,000.
Don't you doesn't get a coaching job? And this technically it's not a coaching job.
Yeah. I was told it was for any job. So basically,
oh really?
But Texas could pay him like $20,000, and North Carolina still got to pay whatever.
He also probably got Matt greasing the wheels on both sides.
But so here's a couple of things to take into consideration. What is Larry Fedora's role as an analyst? Really, when you're hired as an analyst, it boils down to this: you can't recruit, you can't coach guys on the field, you have no electronic communication with the staff on game day. Basically, as an analyst, you're hired, Rod, on how much do you know about football and how much can you help us, number one, self-scout in the offseason, which will be a big part of Larry Fedora's job, and two, during the season, help put together a game plan. Now, I think we all agree that with Tom Herman taking over the bulk of the play calling duties, I don't think we worry about that aspect of it anymore. Because I think Tom Herman at this point trusts Todd Orlando. He trusts the coaches around him to do their jobs. He's comfortable now at this, as comfortable as he can be calling plays from the sideline. He would, granted, and I've talked to people that know Tom Herman.
I think he'd rather it the other way, that he could give it to somebody.
Well, but for right now.
No.
And trust me, I talked to people that know Tom Herman. They're like, dude, when he talks about being up in the booth, like, that's not a myth. Like, that's not just coach speak. Like, he would really, if he's calling plays, he would much rather be in the press box doing it than being on the sidelines.
He's just not totally in his comfort zone with it. So I think it's kind of like, remember Gundy? Gundy used to do that. Gundy called plays, then started hiring an OC. Then I think he called plays again, then hired another OC.
And it's almost by necessity.
And I think, yes, it's exactly right. It's so whatever the situation presents, I'll fill in as needed.
Because he can't go be a head coach in the booth up there, so that just eliminates that.
Unless, like, didn't John Malkovich do a game in the booth one time? When
Bucky tells stories of it.
Did he really?
I believe so.
Yeah.
He's so awkward.
But I think that was like, was that the game where like Tony Brackens like killed him and then he had to go coach from the booth the next game?
Yeah, well then I would do remember. I think I've seen that on video. Yeah, that's the case.
I think Joe Paterno had a broken leg one time and had to coach from the press box.
Hell, he broke his leg twice because Paterno broke his leg like when he was in his late 70s. Like one of his last seasons, he got hit on the sideline.
Yeah, I know somebody will correct me on the John Malkovich story, but at any rate, Rod, this is the arrangement they've got right now. With Tom Herman calling plays from the sidelines. And he said, there are times during the game where Drew Maringer will chip in with something that he sees or Tim Beck will chip in with something that he sees. But to me, the big thing with this staff is putting together a game plan. And Tom Herman talks about it. It's a collaborative effort to kind of get in the staff room and kind of figure out, okay, what do we want this week? What's that call sheet going to look like? Larry Fedora is going to help with that. And it's not even, to me, really worth it to look at Larry Fedora's success in terms of record as a head coach or how he recruited or what he did at North Carolina. Really, all you're looking at, in my opinion, is what does this guy know about offensive football? What can he help us do on that side of the ball? Because that's all you're hiring to do. And, Rod, really, you go back to the time Larry Fedora was the offensive coordinator at Middle Tennessee State. He's been at the forefront of spread innovation. And you go to what he had at North Carolina, and I start looking at the different pieces he had at different times, and especially on the perimeter. And you think about a tight end like Eric Ebron, and we talk about what this Texas staff is trying to do with that tight end position, and you're recruiting guys. No, I know Malcolm Epps is a wide receiver, but you think about the matchup issue he could create at some point. You think about Braden Liebrock. You look at bringing in Jared Wiley. All these tight ends you've got. Larry Fedora's had a guy like Eric Ebron who was a high-level NFL guy who he got to use. And you look at the two best wide receivers he had at North Carolina, it's really kind of what Texas has right now. You've got the big, 6'4" guy on the outside with Mac Hollins who could go win one-on-one battles down the field and be a physical presence. And then you've got, your electric guy in the slot with Ryan Switzer that, you throw him a bubble screen or get it to him on a jet sweep and let him work. So I think this is Tom Herman looking at Larry Fedora's track record, number one, with personnel in the spread, and number two, with how he schemes a game plan and calling a game, and wanted to get him in here because Texas is going to have to open it up more because of the pieces they've got. When you've got a Jordan Whittington and a Jake Smith and possibly Brew McCoy with Colin Johnson, John Burt, Devin Duvernay, all these pieces on the outside with the lack of depth at running back, you're going to have to make the most of what you've got. And I can't think of a better guy in the country that you could get that's available than Larry Fedora to help you do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. BK was talking earlier with Bucky and with E on the B&E show, and he said that he knows Larry Fedora's daughter who went to Texas, and that she told him that, hey, he picked this over Bama. Bama wanted Larry Fedora. So, that's a whole nother conversation about, not only replicating what, Nick Saban's doing with bringing in, old, head coaches who are just trying to reinvent themselves and to try to, get to another level or just try to get another job. But also, the fact that, Tom Herman, he's big about alignment. He always talks about alignment. So you want somebody who thinks like him. That's why the David Beatty thing, I think it's going to happen. You know what I mean? I think he really wants to bring he wanted to do it last year. I don't think it worked out. I think he wants to bring in David Beatty because they're like-minded and they're good friends, and he likes his football mind. But for Larry Fedora, I think what attracted Larry Fedora to Tom Herman and vice versa, both of them are analytical minds. They're analytically driven. Larry Fedora's a big analytical guy. Apparently brags at coaching clinics about having this database he's been building for over 25 years of coaching. You know what I mean? And it's all about situational football. What to do in different situations. Basically, Matt Butler, it's porn to you. All right, it's just all these stats, and we all know about Tom Herman and his green binder and all that kind of stuff. And he's really about the numbers and when you should go for it on fourth down and when's the best time to execute certain things in situational football. I think that number one is what Tom Herman wants access to. I think he wants access to those numbers. We know also he loves tempo. And not just up tempo. Larry Fedora, he's a big Rich Rod fan. Apparently, he's obsessed with Rich Rod too. He wants multi-tempo, what he calls multi-tempo. That's controlling the tempo, like Tom Herman, right? Tom Herman sometimes will go up tempo, sometimes he slows it down. That's what he likes about Larry Fedora too. That's one of the things they're like-minded about. That philosophy is very similar. Something I think that they'll take from Larry Fedora. Also Larry Fedora obsessed with 11 personnel, much like Sean McVay. Runs 11 personnel 90% of the time, much like Sean McVay will run, I think, 85% of the time in the NFL. Tom Herman last year in 2017, I think 2 years ago in 2017, I want to say Texas ran 11 personnel around 90% of the time. And it was
that's that Greg Davis, Rod. You were on Greg Davis. Greg Davis, big fan of 11 personnel.
Yeah, but they just want to keep it simple. And Larry Fedora, much like Sean McVay in this aspect, he likes going into a game with certain concepts, 3 to 5 concepts about how to attack a defense, right? You can attack them where they're vulnerable. Say they're vulnerable up the middle, or they're vulnerable to the deep ball, or they're vulnerable in zone coverage, whatever it is. And then, like Sean McVay, you got 4 or 5 different plays you're running in that game, but you're running them from 18 different formations. You know what I mean? So it's about simplistic brilliance. So I think that's something Tom Herman and he also have in common. I think he likes that about Larry Fedora. Here's what you take from Larry Fedora. He loves the RPO. Apparently, he's a master of the RPO too. He did that at North Carolina with Mitch Trubisky. That was big too. And also and this is something I like that you go look at his quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky showed out. He turned into a top 10 prospect, and I don't think anybody knew anything about Mitch Trubisky before that. But Marquise Williams is the quarterback you should go pay attention to. I believe that's when North Carolina was 11-1 or something like that.
Put up big numbers.
He was 6'2", 225. Sam Ehlinger is 6'3", 230. He's on record for saying at first he used to worry about Marquise when he would run the ball because Marquise would run the ball. He was a power runner at quarterback. He would run in between the tackles. He said, I would worry about him, but then I saw the way he ran, and basically he was our power running game, and I stopped worrying about him. By the way, Marquise Williams is the backup quarterback for the San Antonio Commanders. Commandeers or whatever. And he runs, and they bring him in every now and then on Wildcat packages to run quarterback power, running game. And so that's the connection with Sam Ehlinger. He's the guy that's got experience with those types of quarterbacks. So there's a lot of things you can take from Larry Fedora, and the fact that he's going to be breaking down film for you and helping you come up with game plans, and also helping you, come up with different play designs and different concepts to help Texas offensively. I think it's such a win. It's such a great return on your investment. I can't even describe exactly or quantify exactly how impactful it's going to be, but it's going to be big. It's going to be huge.
And that's,
as I think Trump would say.
When you get to add those to your non-coaching spots, that's what's so big, because that's where you had teams like Alabama that had such more of an advantage compared to the rest of schools, because other schools didn't have this millions upon millions of just mines, and you get to spend this money on the side just to sit on top. And that's where, if you try to get all these NCAA regulations and why you can only have 9 coaches and a certain amount with communication and travel, well, where can we take advantage of the system? Well, you can't within there, but you can when you can afford all the analysts, and especially if in this situation Fedora is saying, I'd rather go work for that non-a-hole guy. I want to go work for Herman and not Saban, and be able to go do that at a school as powerful and be able to get in with, if you go and get production from Texas, that's going to add to your resume that 1 year while you're still thinking about what you're going to do for the next year of your career. So adding a guy like him is pretty big. Can
I share my pseudo connection to Larry Fedora real quick? I like telling the story whenever I can get it in. So you guys know I played small town high school football. My senior year, which I like bragging about this, we're the first team from my school to make the playoffs in 43 years, broke a 43-year playoff drought. We only went one round deep because we ended up playing Rogers High School in the first round, and I think they were ranked 2 or 3 in the state at the time. Their head coach was Lee Fedora, Larry Fedora's brother, and Lee Fedora brought this. It was a spread offense like we hadn't seen, especially at that level. Yeah. When you're seeing wing T teams and slot T teams, maybe you'll see teams that run some pro stuff. When we're looking at they're throwing bubbles and creating vertical seams in the run game, we're this is next level stuff. It's I don't even know what to call it. It's stuff we haven't seen before. So a number of years, and that really kind of in Central Texas really kind of created like everybody started wanting to figure out, okay, what are you guys doing? And a couple of years ago, I had a chance to talk to Lee Fedora about that. I'm like, how did you guys develop that offense? It was basically Larry Fedora's offense. When Larry Fedora was the OC of Middle Tennessee State back in, I think, 99 was his first year there.
Yeah.
Lee Fedora took the Rogers staff. They all piled in a van, went from Rogers, Texas to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and sat down in that office. And they're like, okay, we're going to learn this offense. And they installed it on the drive home. And I'm telling you, at the time, it was just some of the most, like, just innovative, like, football, X's and O's, crazy stuff. I'm like, I'm watching stuff like I've never seen this stuff like breaking down an opponent's film. It's like nuts. It's like I said, it's like next level stuff.
But simple.
Yeah, it's simple enough that high school kids in Rogers, Texas could run it and look really good doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I talked to guys that were like on that staff, and they were like, yeah, I mean, I was like, that just shows you how smart Larry is. And one of the assistant coaches who I know who coached with Lee Fedora for a long time, he's like, yeah, Larry's forgotten more football than Lee knows. That just tells you how smart of a football guy Larry Fedora is. So Larry Fedora, in a way, brought that spread bring that spread influence to Texas high school football and helped bring it to the Big 12 because he was on Ron Zook's staff at Florida when they got blown out, when Ron Zook got fired and Urban Meyer got hired. Mike Gundy hired Larry Fedora when he took over the Oklahoma State program. And keep in mind, that was Les Miles' Oklahoma State that Mike Gundy was the OC for. So they were like 2 backs and 2 tight ends and want to smash in the mouth and get downhill. Mike Gundy brings in Larry Fedora. They end up running a spread offense. And before Larry Fedora leaves for Ole Miss, they get Des Bryant and Zach Robinson. And then Oklahoma State eventually goes and does what they do. So that tells you how cutting edge in terms of the spread offense Larry Fedora has been for a long time. And Rod, as you said, you throw in the RPO stuff and being able to do it with different types of quarterbacks. You're taking a Texas offense that was already pretty good, and now this could be the ingredient that helps you take it to the next level where now, okay, is this offense, we've seen it be good enough week in and week out to trade shots with some of the better offenses in the Big 12. Now are you one of those offenses that can set the bar for everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, the different concepts he's going to bring in because he seems to be cutting edge and innovative. That's the one thing you can say about Larry Fedora, that he always seems to be on the, whether it be talking about the spread initially or the RPO offense now, or even when, the up tempo, when he starts getting to the no huddle from Rich Rod, whatever there is out there, if there is something that is giving offenses an advantage, he's going to be on top of it. And he's integrated all those concepts successfully, interwoven them within his offensive philosophy. You want access to that. It's just a think tank philosophy. That's why you like Mike Gundy. You just brought up Mike Gundy. And Mike Gundy, think about all the offensive coordinators Mike Gundy's brought in. He had Holgorsen there for a while. I mean, he's really good at picking out, the next kind of young, innovative offensive mind to come help run his offense. And he basically just kind of steals concepts, and then that becomes his offense. You know what I mean? And I think Tom Herman's doing that now. I think Herb Hand and the power spread is part of it. And, I describe Larry Fedora's spread as more of a balanced spread. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's a balanced spread. It's the best way I can describe it. I think that is important for Tom Herman because even with the pro spread and then the power spread, running the football it's essential. Mm-hmm. Like you can't air raid. David Beatty will probably be the first kind of true air raid. I know Tim Beck's got some air raid routes, but if David Beatty comes in, he would be the first kind of true air raid
Beatty's
guy.
more of a true, like, when you think of spread offense. And Tom and I talked to David Beatty about this one time. He even said, when Tom Herman got to Rice, basically Tom Herman was kind of running the offense he ran at Texas State was kind of I don't want to disparage it saying it was a watered down version, but it was almost a mirror of what Greg Davis was doing at Texas at the time when they were running zone read.
Is Vince and Barrick Neely was
Barrick Neely was basically Tom Herman's Vince Young.
Yeah.
And so when Tom Herman gets to Rice, David Beatty, who was a spread guy, helps Tom Herman say, hey, let's take this and let's add more spread stuff to it to help fit the personnel at Rice, where you had Chase Clement, Jarrett Dillard, and those guys set all kinds of NCAA records. So, not to get you off track, Rob, but, to your point, yes, David Beatty did help Tom Herman initially in his young career as an offensive coordinator really infuse more true spread elements into what he was doing.
And get into, like, the vertical passing game into it. So, I think that's why he loves David Beatty so much. I think that even though Tom Herman hasn't really shown an interest in the air raid, even though it's all around him, he hadn't really shown an interest to go pick up one of those guys, or even have a young guy on his staff who has ties to it. I do believe David Beatty can bring in, like you said, those concepts. He's done it before, and Tom Herman will trust him, and Tom Herman will bring in, even though we know that Tom Herman wants to be a power running game in its at its rudimentary form. You're looking at the offense and what the tent poles are, the principles of it. He wants to run the damn ball.
Right.
And you're talking about Herman like sort of being like the sponge and bringing in and one style and plucking from another, and the same thing with Gundy. It just made me think of his mullet actually being the sponge to get those ideas into the because like that Simpsons episode where Snake's head and his hair takes over. It's like mullet man Gundy taking over.
Yeah. To your point, Rod, you can't forget the fact that Texas is 14-0 when they've run the ball at least 40 times. And I know, again, I say it all the time. That sounds like a trivial statistic, but like, you ran it 39 times against West Virginia. Okay, and you lost, so what would one more carry been? Well, if Sam Ehlinger doesn't get called down, 1 yard short of a first down on fourth down, you got a first and goal. You run it 3 more times, you get a touchdown right there instead of turning it over, you probably win that game.
And who cares? Your record's 39-1 or whatever. You're still an indicator of success if you have. It isn't like you have to be undefeated for it to work. It shows that you get to dictate the tempo of the game if you want.
That's exactly right, Matt.
Because you have the luxury that you can run the ball and do that and play it out. You don't necessarily have to do that every game, but when you are afforded the luxury to run the ball that much, means you're leading most likely, you're dominating physically, and you're choosing to continue to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you control the clock as much as Tom Herman wants, you're not running 80, 85 plays a game. You're probably in the, Rob? Probably high 60s, low 70s?
55 to 70 plays, anywhere from there.
Yeah.
That's probably where.
Let's say 67, 68 plays.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
We've been really higher than that, up 75 to almost 80 the last couple of years.
And it's interesting, we'll see if Larry Fedora, influences him to, speed it up more.
Yeah.
Instead of just controlling the tempo,
or have the luxury to.
Yeah, I think that the influence will be more like I said, multi-tempo. It's just like, hey, when we want to put pressure on the defense, we won't come out this series.
Watch the Patriots, man. Patriots do it.
Hey, we won't come out, this series, and hell, we're gonna have our H-back in the backfield, and we're gonna slow it up, and we're gonna adjust to when you adjust, that kind of thing.
I'm gonna look at this though, Rod, and I'm gonna say this is Tom Herman looking at the personnel he's got definitely for this season, because you've really only got Larry Fedora probably for 1 year.
Yeah, you got we don't know how the dominoes will fall. Like you get guys who, that's what Saban does. Right. So Saban's so smart about it, right?
Or maybe you have a staff opening and then you can hire whatever. But let's assume
I'm bringing in all these guys, and I'm like, you know what? Hey man, you get a promotion. Oh yeah, congratulations. Go ahead on. I've been waiting. Hey Larry, man, I got a spot for you. Come on up.
Let's
brother.
assume.
Let's my co-OC now.
Let's assume that this is a 1 year deal, right?
Let's
be under that assumption.
Yeah.
And again, I think you just look at the personnel you got, and clearly we've talked about running back being the most talent deficient position, and that's not a knock on Keontae Ingram, who, by the way, I heard over the weekend, even already in offseason, Keontae Ingram's up to like 219 pounds.
Good for him. He's gonna need it.
Yeah,
he's gonna need it. Yeah,
pack on that weight, young man.
He's gonna be taking a beating, what I mean? Because he's the only guy right now.
So running back is the most talent deficient position because you just don't have a lot of depth, and the depth you do have, it's either Danny Young, who, like we talked about, was basically relegated to being like a goal line short yardage fullback last year, and Kirk Johnson, who has, I think, 8 carries in his career. We just have no idea what to expect from Kirk Johnson. I don't think you can place expectations on him. And then, the Darian Brown situation is what it is. And, Jordan Whittington's going to get a crack at running back. But you take Jordan Whittington and you look at, you've got Jake Smith, and you're going to have these weapons that you really haven't had before at Texas, and that even – you've got to really go like Tom Herman very rarely in his coaching career has he had guys. I mean, think about it. He's had guys like Jalen Marshall at Ohio State.
Duke Catalon was kind of one of those guys. James Casey is the guy that in his tenure as an offensive coordinator and a play caller, he's been, I would say, the most successful at utilizing a guy with a multiple skill and a unique skill set like that. I mean, I think he had at least 40 receptions and at least like 30 rushes 2 years ago.
Little Jordan Humphrey was like James Casey light, basically. And I know that sounds like I'm knocking Little Jordan Humphrey, but now go back and look at what James Casey did at Rice.
But like you said, now you got like 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got Jordan Whittington, you got Jake Smith,
Brew McCoy.
Yeah, exactly. You got a lot of those guys, and you don't want to waste them.
No.
Because we all agree Little Jordan Humphrey was awesome, but I'm not even sure he was maximized.
Right.
You know, because maybe they just didn't know how, or maybe out of necessity they just couldn't do it because they were so young in the like the implementation of that offense. Like it was just second year.
And you still got, Josh Moore and Devin Duvernay. You still got all kinds of weapons on this offense. So I think this is Tom Herman looking at the personnel and saying, yes, I want to run the football, but I've got to figure out all these weapons on the perimeter. How can I get the most out of them?
I agree with that. I'm with you on that 100%. Yeah. So you need guys. You need basically other guys who have kind of innovative ways or more innovative concepts to maximize all these unique talents you have all over the field. If those 2 or 3 targets are 2 or 3 touches that Jake Smith is going to get in the game, or Brew McCoy is going to get, or Jordan Whittington, let's say he gets his 5 touches in the game, you're going to want to make sure they count. Yeah. You don't want them to just be wasted touches. You know what I mean? You want to weaponize these guys. And I think that's what Larry Fedora, that's what you're saying. He brought Larry Fedora in like, man, how do I weaponize all these guys within still the framework of this offense?
Right.
Yeah.
That's key. Ron, I want you to put your X's and O's hat on real quick. Sam Ehlinger, and I don't think this offense would go to a true RPO offense like Larry Fedora was, because you're still going to have, you're still going to have the shell, the framework, if you will, the pro spread. It's always going to be that way. But Sam Ehlinger, and before I get on to Sam Ehlinger, Tom Herman, I think we've seen him be with tempo, kind of like Gus Malzahn is. Like, Gus Malzahn doesn't run tempo all the time, but when they want to mash the gas and go fast, they have the ability to do that. We'll just see if Larry Fedora influences Tom Herman to maybe do that a little bit more. Because let's say the Sam Ehlinger point. Tempo more than anything helps your offensive line, right? I think we can all agree with that. Like it really simplifies a lot of things with your offensive line.
A lot of things.
But I think as many new faces and new pieces as Texas is going to plug in on that offensive line, I think any way you can help those guys do it. And look, we saw with the Texas offensive line in 2016 with the veer and shoot, how good that offensive line was with him. It wasn't like, with the exception of Connor Williams, like you didn't have great personnel on that offensive line. I mean, you had a veteran with Ken Perkins, but you had Jake McMillan, who was kind of spare parts they got the most out of, and Zach Shackelford was a true freshman. But we saw how tempo helped that offensive line. I think more than any other group on the field, tempo helps your offensive line. So I think that's part of it too. Tom Herman saying, look, yeah, we could maybe get a couple of these grad transfers to help us fill holes, but I think you've got to look at worst case scenario. Okay, what if you do have to go into a season with, I don't know, Junior Angalau and Derek Kerstetter as your starting guards, or Junior Angalau and Denzel Okafor with Kerstetter tackle, or whatever. What can we do to help these guys? I think tempo, where everything's moving a little bit quicker and guys are having to think less, react more, maybe that's an element that Larry Fedora can bring to the table, help Tom Herman with how to better utilize tempo to help your offensive line.
Yeah, we know that when Tom Herman doesn't, he basically says about his offense that we will adapt to any situation, we'll be what we have to be, right?
And
whatever we need to be, we got to be a team that shoots it out, and get into, this kind of shootout with Texas Tech or something, like we can do that.
Like on the road?
Yeah, if we got to control the game and slow the game down, we can do that. So we know that Tom Herman, I think he wants, whatever the situation called for, that's what he wants to be. In terms of being able to maximize the offensive, potential, I think, and we said this about spread offenses, right? Air raid offenses when they go up-tempo all the time. Even Chip Kelly was criticized for this in the NFL. Does it hurt you in other phases of the game?
Right.
Like your
when
defense.
when you're that extreme going up-tempo, and we know Tom Herman's all about all 3 phases, does it hurt your defense to go up tempo? And it's great when you're scoring touchdowns, no problem. But when you get two 3-and-outs in a row
after 10-play drives, and now your defense has played 26 of 30 plays.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, do you have enough depth on the defensive side of the ball to be able to deal with being exposed like that defensively? So I think Tom Herman will remain loyal to multi-tempo. Like, hey, no. Sometimes I want to put pressure on the defense. Sometimes I want to do it. Depending on the situation, sometimes I want to do it more often than not. But there's still other times where I want to slow it down. Right. I want to ram it. Literally, I remember we talked about Texas being the best on a 6-minute drive team in the Big 12 at one point. Like, they can put together a 6-minute drive as well as anybody. How'd they beat Georgia? Long drives, man. They just put together. And in the Big 12, I think Tom Herman learned, okay, the best situation for me in the Big 12 is to keep those potent offenses off the field. Let me just keep the ball for a long period of time. Hell, the Patriots did it against Kansas City. You know what I mean? The Patriots, they were doing it in the playoffs. That's why they were playing with a fullback on the field. It's like, whoa, man, let's just keep the ball. You know what I mean? Patrick Mahomes can only do so much damage if I have double the amount of plays that they do.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Herman has some of that in him where he goes, Now, if I'm going up against a potent offense, if I'm going up against, that Georgia offense, there's no way I'm giving those two running backs the ball. You know what I mean? Like in certain situations, like I'm going to keep the ball for a long period of time. And I think Texas got really good at that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Those 4 or 5 minute, 11 play drives. He wants to keep some of that. So that ain't going nowhere. So I think they'll just be multiple, like in terms of how they approach tempo. Sometimes you're going to see them fast. Sometimes they're going to slow it down. Sometimes, even within the drive, they're going to slow it down. And then they're going to speed it up because they like the play call. And they're like, oh, they're weak right there. Let's run it back, just like the Patriots did.
To your point on that, Rod, real quick, Matt, on Texas scoring drives last year, you had 25 scoring drives that lasted at least 4 minutes and went at least 9 plays in length.
You know what I mean? Like, they got good at that. That was one of the things they were actually decent at. It's just kind of controlling the game. You know what I mean? And at one point, and sometimes it was to put the game away. A lot
and
of the time,
understanding the game script and knowing that this is going to benefit you. And it's exactly like when I remember we were all looking at the numbers after Charlie Strong's first year and sort of tried to figure out what the hell Texas has averaging more yards per play than all these great Big 12 offenses at that time. Yet Texas had a losing record, and the one glaring thing was Texas was getting the fewest plays per game. And like last year, you look at Michigan, they're like 128th in plays per game, just 62. Like teams that can be a good team on a per play basis, but you aren't getting the results because you can't dictate that tempo. And you look at Texas this past year, just to the point that we were just talking about, and the luxury to run the ball and dictate that tempo, and which means in turn you're keeping the opponents off the field more. Texas, everybody remembers, was very good at home, was 5-1 at home last year. 78.2 plays per game at home. Opponents were only getting 69.7 plays. So you were getting 8 more plays than your opponents. Now on the road, where Texas was just above 500, you have Texas 75.1 plays. The opponents were getting 74.4 plays. Not much of the margin. And it's just the idea that, well, what happens if you're trying to keep the ball away from the opponents? Well, that means that you're going to have to possess the ball, which coincides with running the ball and being able to have the quantity of running. And it also just allows you, now you can still pack it in. You don't have to be all time of possession because it isn't about time of possession necessarily. We can pack our 10 plays into those 4 minutes and be potent inside of them. But if we want to, like you said, at the end of the game, draw it out, you're just afforded that luxury via the clock and can do that at any point. So it just dictates that, okay, well, when we want to keep that team off and we feel like we can continue to do this, we'll just impose our will. But if you know that, no, this isn't going to work, we still need to get those explosives to be able to win. Well, it feeds off of the run game, and it gives you that freedom to be able to play call how you like, and then it can allow your defense to come out and play aggressive in the plays that they actually get on the field, because it's all about getting the ball back for your offense to be able to dictate those terms. And having a +9 per play ratio is insanely huge.
So when you talk about controlling the game, controlling the clock, controlling the tempo, having the best short yardage goal line option in college football, as we said, Sam Ehlinger probably helps you do that. So, Rod, get back to the Sam Ehlinger question. Put your X's and O's hat on. More RPOs for Sam Ehlinger. What does that do to your offense?
It takes it to another level. I mean, in terms of how I think the offense is going to end up being next year, just throwing it out there, my projection, it's going to be a pick your poison offense. Pretty simple. Colin Johnson, John Burt, Devin Duvernay on the outside to start with. That takes the top off of any defense. As if you're coaching your safeties in practice that week, you're like, man, you got to be over the top of these dudes because they got speed, world class speed to get behind you one way. And if Colin Johnson gets position on anybody, then that's a done deal. So that's so that's the first question or first quandary, I should say, the conundrum for the defense that they got to figure out. And then the second part is, you just talked about Sam Ehlinger, the power running game, having such a unique quarterback like that if we get to 2nd and 3 or 3rd and 2, it's all day, every day. You know it's coming, but you can't stop a power running game like that when you have +1 in the backfield with Sam Ehlinger, 6'3", 230. And that's kind of the other option that they got to figure out. Like, man, how do we stop that power running game? Because if not, if they don't devote bodies to even stop the running game, you're hoping that Keontae Ingram or whoever's in the backfield with Sam Ehlinger, that alone will force teams to go, well, we got to put 7 in the box right there just to stop those guys. That'll give you matchups on the outside. Let's just say some teams able to stop both. They got a really good defensive game plan. That's when you get into your matchups. That's when the RPOs start playing off because you got RPOs are designed to attack certain positions. You got a weak outside linebacker. You got a safety that likes to bite. All right, let's break
Make
down.
him commit.
Right, yeah, exactly.
2 or 1.
You know what I
Which
mean?
one
You
you
can
go
be
with?
really specific about where you're going with your RPOs based on the route concepts,
You're
based on
deduced
what
to
you
your
consider to
worst
be the
matchup.
backside. Exactly. All right, whatever corner you think is going to bite on it, it all depends on the matchup, and Larry Fedora can help you figure that out in attacking the defense. But then you got the Colin Johnson question after that, right? Then you go, there are certain matchups like, okay, you covering Colin Johnson one-on-one? Okay, well, that's all day, every day. We're going to check to that. And then that's when you get into your Jake Smiths and your Jordan Whittingtons and your Cade Brewers and your Reese Latals. Those are all matchup guys. All right? You got a linebacker on Reese Latau or Cade Brewer? Yes. That's all day, every day. All right? Oh, Jordan Whittington motioned out and y'all put a linebacker on him? Yes. All right, that's great. You know what I mean? That's when you can get. So depending on how you built the game plan, it's like, okay, what are you gonna stop? Because whatever you decide to stop, that's what I'll allow you to determine how you want me to beat you.
Yeah, well, cancel out
You know what
this
I mean?
one. Okay, well, this one. Okay,
Yeah,
well, what do you
and
like
that's-
about this one up the middle?
That's why the Jake Smiths, that's why the Cade Brewers, the Reese Latals, the Jordan Whittingtons, that's why those guys, Rue McCoy, that's why they're important. Just like Colin Johnson, and Lil Jordan Humphrey, they're matchup nightmares. You got all those guys across the field, then they truly have to pick their poison. They don't have enough guys to match up and defend. That's why I think the offense is going to break down. That's why Larry Fedora is big.
That's why adding all
Because-
these analysts, that's all that they
Yeah,
work
it's
on
all
all
they
week.
work on. Like, okay, I need you to give me the 5 plays that if we are stopped on 3rd down and they've been taking away our deep ball and they're also taking away the power running game successfully, who can we attack and on what down and with what concept?
Yeah.
Boom. That's what Larry Fedora's going to do. He's going to give them 10 of those. And I
Like-
guarantee they'll probably be RPO related.
Like we talked about, really, it's really you're bringing in Larry Fedora to help you win a championship. And what I mean by that is what we talked about, the Big 12 championship was the most disappointing aspect of that game.
Good point.
Texas never really had a counterpunch.
I agree with that
They
offensively.
came in with a game plan, and when Oklahoma adjusted and they realized, oh, Oklahoma can stop the run game this time, what are we going to do? They didn't really have anything.
They didn't really have anything, yeah. I mean, I think they kind of had, a little counter. Yeah, they didn't do much.
Yeah,
No.
it's just that the entire
Off
when
of
you
that-
build
off
when
that
you're able
outside
to
zone.
run, like we were talking about, that you can really dictate different terms. It doesn't compartmentalize you. If you aren't going to run, then you aren't going to be able to dictate the tempo. You aren't going to be able to have different ways that play action works. Or if you weren't a RPO type team, that wasn't being manipulated there. And then in that situation, well, if you're deduced to just being a team that needs to drop back and throw the ball, it's a lot easier to defend, or it's all in on Sam.
Well, we'll have time to talk about Larry Fedora. And, Matt, was there anything else you
that
wanted
baby
to
face.
No, well,
bring up?
Fedora, there is one thing, because you
Okay,
should
go for
ask
it.
him to clarify if his statements regarding the game of football, because he loves
Yeah,
football
he
more
does
than
love football.
anybody.
Yeah.
And
He got himself in trouble because he basically said he didn't believe in like the concussion crisis.
and I think that was him being the analytical
CT.
mind.
I think he said there's more research that needs to be done or something like
Well,
that.
it was just his analytical mind of being, well, there isn't a direct link. Like, you
Yes,
can't directly
yeah.
link anything to evolution, but science
but
shows you that it
they were like,
slowly evolves that way.
Yeah.
But the greatest one was from last July, whenever it was I think it was ACC Media Days, and some interviewer asked him if why football means so much to him, and he got into this whole thing talking about the American military, and he once spoke to an Army war general and asked him what is the big part of the game that attractive to you, and he's like, actually, no, the American military football is what makes the American military the best in the world. The general's answer per Fedora was simple: the United States is the only football playing nation in the world. And it's like, that's why America has the best military. And it's just like straight over the head. Like, man, America was invented for 125 years before the turn of the 20th century. So,
Because
yeah.
that's one of the reasons.
The
America's
simple
great.
answer, U.S., it's the only football playing nation in the world.
One of the
That's why our
reasons.
Army's the best.
One
I
of the
thought that was great.
just so we're all on the same page. This is what Larry Fedora said about CTE and the concussion crisis. I believe this was at ACC Media Days last year.
The same
Yeah.
setting of the world general.
I'm not sure that anything is proven that football itself causes CTE.
Yeah,
My
head-on collisions. In
My
football,
understanding is repeated blows to the head cause it. So I'm assuming that every sport, football included, could be a problem with that if
Damn
you've
soccer
got
hitting
any kind of
balls.
contact. That doesn't diminish the fact that the game is safer than it's ever been because we continue to tweak the game and try to make it safer for our players.
It's his semantics battle. It isn't football. It's
yeah.
the head-on collisions. And it was like, yes, which happened in football.
Happened a lot in football. Yeah. But-
Chicken or the egg, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we do know this. Larry Fedora knows how to coach some damn offense.
He does. Yeah, people get on about his head coaching record, and I was like, well, he ain't coming.
Doesn't really matter. Yeah, you're not asking him to.
Yeah, to coach.
You're not asking him to build a program.
Yeah,
you're asking him to help you beat Oklahoma.
As you point out, not coaching, not recruiting, not doing anything. He's basically just watching. He's in a room, probably about the size of the room we are in right now, and he's watching film
with a clicker and a notepad.
And he's gonna be doing it for 12 hours a day.
Well, we used to envision Muschamp doing it.
Yeah, and he'll
just
go talk
breaking
to the coaches.
screens.
Yeah, and that's, you know what? And honestly, that think tank atmosphere, and I would love to get him in, David Beatty and both of those guys, because I'm all about, I believe like Nick Saban, I want future and former head coaches on my staff.
Mm-hmm.
I want as many of them as I can get. Future and formers. Guys who want to be head coaches, they're going to be the Kirby Smarts of the world and the Mel Tuckers of the world and all the Lane Kiffins of the world. I want all of them.
Butch Jones,
yeah, he had Don Capers on his staff at one point. I mean, that's where he's gonna seek out anybody who used to be a head coach, because I think he understands. Even in failure, you learn so much. Hell, you could argue you learn way more in failure than you do in success.
Yeah, because you're trying to figure out what went wrong.
All those guys come there and they go, "Yeah, this is where I messed up," and he's like, "Oh, really? Okay."
You know who I bet he learned that from? Bill Belichick. Because how do we? When Bill Belichick got to New England, how much of that was taking what he did in Cleveland and saying, okay, this is what worked, but this is what didn't, and this is what I need to fix, and this is what we need to make different than what we did in Cleveland.
Well, and also it's just Cleveland.
Yeah. And also,
that too.
Wrap it up. Yeah,
and then you end up having Fedora lock him up in a room. Hopefully he's a football Marshall Madoff.
Well done.
Matt, thanks for everything, man.
You're welcome.
Rod B, appreciate the time and the knowledge.
Oh, anytime, brother, anytime.
For Matt, for Rod, for Travis, the best damn videographer in a podcast game, for everybody at the Austin Radio Network and the Horn, 104.9, 101 on AM 1260, streaming on the Horn app and at hornfm.com, where you get Rod on the Rodcast each and every weekday from 1 to 3, and you can hear this show. And thanks to Matt, you get our archives on the Longhorn Blitz SoundCloud page.
Yep, just type in Longhorn Blitz.
For the Horn family, for the Horn's 24/7 family, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for downloading and listening, and we will catch you again on the next episode.
You've been listening to Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com. Remember, for the latest Longhorn news 24/7, visit horns247.com.